Hi friends, welcome to Srisai IT Hub. In this video of Core Java Programming, we are going to discuss the following topic: default values for Java variables in Java class. And this concept is related to types of Java variables in Java class. So let us try to understand a small revision. What do you mean by types of Java variables in a Java class? So inside a Java class, we have three types of variables. First one, non-static variables, non-static data members. Okay, right? So these are also called as instance variables because their memory is allocated separate for every object of a class. Okay, and instance variables are accessible only through object of a class outside a class. Next, static variables or static data members. Technically, they are also called as class variables, and they have memory allocated common for all the objects of a class. And they are accessible outside the class using class name and object name. And the third type of variables are local variables. Technically, they are also called as method variables because they are defined inside particular method of a class. Okay, right. So one small important point here: data members of class means instance variables plus class variables. Okay, instance variables and class variables makes up data members of a class. Okay, instance variables means non-static variables and class variables means static variables. Both make up data members of a class. Okay, right. So what will be the default values for these three different types of variables when we don't initialize them and use it in a program? Okay, so coming to default values for Java variables. So for instance variables and class variables. So for instance variables and class variables, what are the default values? Okay, right. So first of all, default values means when variables are not initialized in program. They are not initialized in program but used in program. So default values means when variables are not initialized in program and used in program. Okay, then what value is given by default? So what will be the default value given to such variables are called as default values, and these default values are given by compiler when we compile the program. Okay, right. So for example, for instance variables and class variables, what are the default values? So all integers. Integers means byte, short, int, long. Okay, so the default value is 0. All floating numbers or floating variables, float, double, the default value is 0.0. So char data type, okay, or character data type, we have only one char. So for this, default value is Unicode null character. So Unicode null character or its Unicode is 0. Okay, right. So this character is nothing but a null character whose Unicode is 0. Okay, and it is null character. So null character means no character, it is not visible. Okay, right. And then For booleans, we have only one data type, boolean data type. Now for this it is false, default value. And for any class object, so class is a user defined data type, so for any class object the default value is null. So here null means nothing or no value. For any class object, student class object, string class object, integer class object, it will take null. Null means nothing or no value. So these 5 different default values are applicable to both instance variables and class variables. Okay. Right. Second, coming to local variables. Okay. So for local variables, we don't have any default values. We don't have any default values. Hence, local variables should be compulsory initialized. Okay. Should be compulsory initialized and used in program. Otherwise, we'll get a error. Otherwise, we get error, compilation error. So let us try to demonstrate this with a small program. Default values for Java variables, instance variables, class variables, and local variables. So program default values variables example1 dot java. So program to demo default values for Java variables. Right, so take a new page, first write the comments, and then we'll take class A, okay, and then main class default values variables example1. So this will be our main class with main method. Public static void main string of args. Okay, so first we'll save this program in our working directory. Right, save it as default values variables example1 dot java. Right, so we'll take one integer, one floating, one character, one boolean, one object. So in integers we'll take int, okay, a, next float b, and char c, next boolean d, and then we'll take string ss. Okay, so these are non-static variables now because we are not using static keyword. We are not using static keyword for them. Okay, right, so we'll say here void display, which will display all these values for us. Okay, so system dot out dot println, we'll write here something like default values. Right, so first we'll display integer default value. Right, so integer plus a. Similarly, we'll take one floating value, floating default value b, next character default value. So it is, you will get this as Unicode null character, which is not visible. Null character is not visible. Okay, and then fourth one boolean plus d, and then string. So this is object value, default value ss. You can take any object, student object, class A object, anything. Okay, Right, so let's go to the main class. Just create an object of class A and then obj.display. Okay, so it should display all the default values, okay, for our program. Right, save the program, open the command prompt, go to your working directory, compile the program, Java C, default values, variables, example1.java. Right, so compile this and run it. Java default values variables example1. So the default values goes like this: integers byte short int long 0, floating float and double 0.0, char Unicode null character, it is not visible here, okay, and then boolean false, any object value will be null. Right, same thing. What we'll do here is we'll make this as static int a, static int b, float b, static char c, static boolean d, static string ss. Right, so save this, remaining everything is same. So create the object of a class and access the display method. Okay, so display method is a non-static method. Outside the class, we can access it only through object.display. Right, so recompile and run it. So here also default values for static data members are 0, 0.0, null character, false, and object value is null. Okay, right. So finally, local variables. So let us take directly local variables inside the main method. So main method int I comma j comma sum. Sum is equals to I plus j, and then system dot out dot println will print the sum. So sum is equals to plus sum. Right, so I'm not initializing ij, but I'm using directly in the program. So these are local variables. So local variables compulsory we have to initialize and use it in a program, otherwise we'll get the error here, sum I plus j. So come to the command prompt, recompile the program, and then error, variable I, variable j are not initialized in the program, I plus j I plus j j. So compulsory we have to initialize and use. So I is something like 1, j is something like 2, sum I plus j 1 plus 2. Okay, we should get the answer as 3. So sum value I plus j 3. So this is how we get default values for 3 types of variables in Java, a Java class: instance variables, class variables, and local variables. Thank you for watching this video. Do like and share this video, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel Sri Sai IT Hub. Have a nice day.